Hello everyone, welcome to the Desolation Sounds Podcast. My name is Stephen Hook and this is a podcast celebrating everything to do within the world of alternative music, be that rock, punk, metal or extreme metal, and for this week and beyond. Coming up on this week's show, album reviews for Fit For An Autopsy, Thornhill, Puppy, the Corpse Flower project between Mike Patton and Jean-Claude Vannier, Clipping, and Jimmy Eat World. Who knows, we might actually be able to make this weekly again. Probably unlikely. I'm due to move house literally any day now. We will briefly start with Motley Crue. They've reformed. They're fucking idiots. Moving on. Download. It's just got fucking big. Or announced. Yeah, fuck off. So there's 34 new bands have just been announced. A ridiculous number like that. I probably should have found a number. Grand total 37. There you go. The big hits include Volbeat, Killswitch Engage, Baby Metal, and Pretty Reckless, according to Kerrang. But we're going to go through all of them. Isn't that exciting? Conveniently, Kerrang have put it in alphabetical order. So, for Download 2020 next year, we have Airborne, Baby Metal, Baroness, Blackout Problems, Bleed From Within, Blues Pills. That's not annoying, although they are very good. Bokassa, British Lion, Bush, Celador Moon Crow, amazing. Chelsea Grin, Dead Label, Dead Posey, Dying Fetus. What was it? Why not Dying Fetus 2? Electric Boogaloo. Electric Wizard, Killswitch Engage, Lit, Lotus Eater, Mariana's Trench, Obituary, Periphery, POD, Powerwolf, Puppy, Skillet, Stone Broken, Theory. I was going to say Theory Dead Man, that's not quite right. Just Theory. The Last International, Upwind, The Pretty Reckless, Wild Hearts, Tiny Moving Parts, Uncured, Volbeat, Wargasm, Wayward Sons, and Wednesday 13. Reading out loud, it's not as bad as I originally thought it was going to be when I saw a lot of those bands. When I sort of the poster for it. But it's still not great, is it? Am I the only... It is tradition to hate every single download announcement that gets put out each year, and then people still go anyways. But genuinely, I do think it might be a bit bland this year. I'm already not a fan of the headlines as it is. And as it stands, the headliners are, on the Friday, you've got Kiss, Deftones, and The Offspring, I think. They've got a purple logo instead of just text, so I'm going to clue them in. The Saturday, you've got Iron Maiden, Gojira. And Sunday, you've got System of a Down, Korn, Volbeat, and Disturbed. They're the ones with their own logos, so that's what I'm going to assume are like the big hits for each day. Now, a few people I've seen have pointed out the fact that underneath Iron Maiden and underneath Deftones for the Saturday and Friday, respectively, there is a gap there. If you compare it to the Sunday, you've got System of a Down, Korn, Volbeat, and Disturbed. So they have the space for the four logos. So is that more sub-headliners to come, or is that just weird spacing? I don't know what the proper word is for like spacing in text, but if it's just bad that. In terms of the actual bands that are being announced, we'll go by day on the Friday. Starting from the bottom. Bokassa are a band that always have like a lot of stuff talked about them, but I've just never got into them personally. I thought they're... I've only listened to a few of their tracks. I can't remember how it goes, but I just remember thinking this is just very normal of this kind of music. British Lion. I thought that was the band with Steve Harris. And if so, I found it really boring. Blues Pills, I've heard one song in there and it is insanely catchy. They are, as the name suggests, very psychedelic blues sort of stuff. Very good if you like that sort of thing. Personally, I think they would do better at a place like Bloodstock or Roadburn, but oh well. Electric Wizard, more stony sort of stuff. Tiny Moving Parts are going to be fantastic, as are Pup. Don't know anything about Wayward Sons, don't know anything about Theory. Airborne, they're the ultimate party band, I think. Black Veil Brides, they've just lost their bassist. Is that Ashley Purdy who's just left? After saying last year that Black Veil Brides were about to split up, so that went well. And then Offspring, Deftone, Kiss. On the Saturday feels like a more metal kind of day. You've got Uncured, Dead Label, Lotus Eater. Bleed From Within will be a good shout. I actually wasn't that big fan of Error. I know a lot of people pop their tits for it. I just kind of blew me by. Chelsea Grin and Chelsea Grin. Blackout Problems, never heard of. Puppy will be amazing. The Last International, don't know much about them. Dying Fetus and Obituary, two big death metal heavy hitters. That's why I think the Saturday's going to be a little bit more metal for everyone in general, especially with the headlines as well. Stonebroken, The Wild Hearts would be a great shout. Bush, did not realise they were still going. Doubtry, why? Pretty Reckless, also why? Killswitch Engage would be a laugh. And Gojira and Maiden sub and headlining. I would much rather seen Gojira headline, but never mind. And then on the Sunday, Dead Posey, Mariana's Trench, Lit. Everyone's going to turn up for... Oh, what is that Lit song? I love it. It's a great song, don't get me wrong, but... My Own Worst Enemy, there we go. You remember that time? I can never remember anything when I record these. Where was I? Wednesday 13, I really dug the last album. You can hear the review on it in the last couple of weeks. I can't. It was the Halloween one where it's got orange text instead of, POD, didn't think they were still going, but there'll be a laugh. Of Mice and Men, I haven't listened to the new album yet. It's on my to-listen list for... Not the week coming, the week afterwards. So, I still like... Fuck. Not Cold World. That was the one that came afterwards, which was shit. I had You're Not Alone on it. And it's the album where I'm pretty sure I've tried to talk about it 100 times, and I can never remember what the fucking thing is called. Help me, internet. Talk about yourselves. Restoring Force. Why can I never remember what the album's called? Love that album. Really, really liked it. Cold War was boring. I don't know. Cold War was just a step down. It was one afterwards that was boring. Unbreakable. And from what I've heard about this new album, it is a lot more in your face and a bit more of the metal. So, yeah. I'll be listening to that in 2 weeks' time. Periphery, there'll be... I think I've slowly warmed to Periphery over the past year or so. I still listen to Reptile quite regularly from the last album, and it's a fucking slamming song. It's not often I'll sit and happily listen to 60 minutes worth of music, or 60 minutes worth of a single song. Powerwolf, great shout. Ailstorm, Baroness would be fucking great, actually. Get rid of Skillet and just keep Baroness, because you've got Skillet, Baby Metal are going to be fantastic. They should be headlining. Disturbed, okay, someone needs to. Volbeat would be a great shout, Korn would be a great shout, and System of a Down would be a great shout, but the headline deserves to go to someone else, in my humble opinion. And yeah, I think there's gaps. You just had Rage announce a comeback, but they're going to go with Woodstock for Grown-Ups. I can't remember what's called. Coachella, there we go. And of Mice and Men, My Chemical Romance even. I don't know where I got that from. My Chem. See, I think My Chem now, because of like the furore that's like, well, not the furore, sorry, but just the anticipation now that they've come back, I think they are beyond sub-headlining anything. I would have kept, because I'm very confident the fact that Andy Copping will have known much more about various different things and goings on more than the likes of me or you. So I feel like he would have the inkling that My Chem reunion was on the horizon. So I would have just kept a little bit of mystery. Maybe kept, well, announced two headlines, just say, ooh, weird, mysterious things happening for the third headliner. And then when My Chem announced their comeback, you could say the third headliner is My Chem. And I would have been much more positive about that. But I'm not allowed nice things. This is why I don't get to book things. But that's Download. It's very mediocre so far. There's a lot of bands that I'd be interested in, but I have a feeling that they're not going to get the time or like the set times or lengths that I would give them, because everyone's got their own preference when it comes to music. That's the whole point. But that's Download. Do give me your input. What do you think about Download? Because even my housemate, who was very pro Download and like was all over it last year, whereas I was quite nonplussed, even he was a bit maybe about it also. Yeah, I am intrigued to hear what y'all have to say for yourselves. But we're going to move on. We're going to move on to the album reviews, and we're going to start with Fit For An Autopsy and their new album, The Sea of Tragic Beasts. They're from New Jersey, and this is their 5th album, and they are still classed as a deathcore band. And they're one of the few bands that seem to be flying that deathcore flag, A, well, B, I want to say proudly. I don't think they're ashamed of that deathcore tag anymore or at all. I think they're up there with the likes of Carnifex or Die Artist Murder, Whitechapel, and I'm going to throw Suicide Silence in there as well. I know the previous self-titled album wasn't well received. I thought it was alright. It's something different, but they're promising to go back to their heavy roots for the new album, which shows you should never change because people won't like you. Yeah, they seem to be of that ilk where when it all came through, they were one of the few people to actually blend death metal and metalcore well. And each of those bands have got some kind of pull about them, whether it is the songwriting or the riffs or how much they try to expand the deathcore genre. Fit For An Autopsy's pull seems to be that 3-guitar attack, which just creates this fucking huge wall of sound in their music. They've got cascading riffs that just bounce off each other and overlap each other, but not to the point where it's difficult or it's headache inducing, or like you start talking about things like prog or math. And amongst those 3 guitarists is a young boy called Will Putney. I'm pretty sure I've talked about Will Putney a lot on the podcast. He is a very, very good producer. As a side bit, he's done a fucking cracking job on this on his own, but he's worked with the likes of Die Artist Murder, Vane, Harm's Way, Counterparts, Every Time I Die, Silent Planet, and like just from those bands, there's a lot of bands where I was like, I could take it, leave it musically, but production-wise, it was crystal clear, and it was so crisp, and they got the best out of each one of those bands and what they wanted to do. And like another part with, I kind of touched on a minute ago, with Fit For An Autopsy, they antitheticized, is that a word, antitheticized? They represented, we'll go with, because I know that's a word, they represented what deathcore on paper should have been. So when you had this blast of deathcore bands that came out in the early 2000s, everyone seemed to follow the same trend at the same time. And then you just had like people split from different directions what they were happy with. So you had everyone come in and just be like death metal but with breakdowns. They're like, all right, okay, this is a thing. Then a bunch of bands tried to be who could play the fastest, and then you all had these deathcore bands which were borderline like power violence or hardcore punk territories, but with death metal. And it's just like, okay, this is just, with bad production, this is just literal noise. And so you had a few people that went that way. Then you had the people who could play the deepest, and that's when you start getting into like slam and downbeat territory. And that was shit, personally, but you had a bunch of bands that go through that. And then, you know, if there seems to be like a wave with deathcore. There's like a symphonic wave as well, which I think Chelsea Grin went down. Fit For An Autopsy, as well as a few of those bands I mentioned earlier. They were one of the few bands to take the songwriting of new age metalcore and blend it with the speed, the ferocity, and the riffs of OG death metal. It's a similar sort of argument when metalcore started breaking out, and you've got the commercial metalcore, we'll call it, which is verse, chorus, breakdown, the chorus played, or the breakdown played into the main riff played slowly into the final chorus, and then you bounce between cleans and growls and this sort of shit. Compare that to what metalcore is on paper, which is metallic hardcore. You are at polar opposites of that genre. Bullet for My Valentine does not sound like Converge. And, you know, it's on par with that. You've taken what a genre should be, and they're the ones that we revere highly, and they, you know, they're the ones that when you start talking about, oh, this is like this, a new band of this genre comes out, you compare them to the people who make the genre as it's supposed to be, instead of what, you know, the shitter end. Pretty much, I don't like commercial metalcore, and I don't like what is deemed commercial deathcore. Actual deathcore is kind of hit and miss with me still, but, you know. For this, sorry, I lost my train of thought. For this, the riffs are there. The riffs are there in force, and that's why I think it belongs more to what actual deathcore is. You've got like a 3 guitar attack. They almost get to the, it's difficult because when I initially wrote this down like to listen to, I just put it down as a straight up death metal record because of how much like the riffs play such an integral part to the music. Listen to it and finding out that they do blend the more clean vocals and just how they mold the music and how they write the music all together is what's brought me more to a deathcore kind of sound. Just the opening riff of the album, it just screams Gojira. Like I've seen like reviews make that comparison as well because it's such an easy one, but the opening title track, Unloved, as well, has an amazing array of riffs all up in there, and just musically for that sort of play, it's fucking heavy. Some of the things they come out with is always one of that case of how do human beings think that kind of shit. And yeah, and in terms of like what I was saying before, the death metal into the metalcore, there's a lot of very metalcore feeling songs that like take in the influence from melodic death metal. You've got the higher pitch, you've got the faster melodic choruses, you've got some brilliant clean vocals in there. Just again, the title track, I love the title track to this album. The clean vocals on there are just incredible because they're not the really whiny kind of clean vocals that played a lot of the metalcore and deathcore bands a few years ago. There's quite a staunch roughness to it where they are cleans, but they're not, you couldn't put them on like a pop record, for example, whereas a lot of those other sort of bands you probably could do. And it reiterates my argument that to have a melodic break in your music, it doesn't mean it has to be slow or it doesn't have to be meandering or something like that. You can have, in melodic death metal, in metalcore, and in deathcore, you can have those big, melodic, grandiose, traditionally choruses, but you don't have to break in speed. Like, you still got double kick drums on the title track, and it fucking works, and it fucking works well. Lyrically, it feels like the Sea of Tragic Beast is a bit more, it feels like a statement album. They are angry boys is Fit For An Autopsy. Like on Warfare, it opens with the line, when the fuck did everyone decide to become politician? All you do is talk, but you forget how to fucking listen. In Birds of Prey, you've got villains of faith and poison manipulating the model citizen, abuses of power, the final hour, a crushing brush at the fallen line as the gods grant to the whole for the last time. And in Shepherd, you've got man is the cancer, we call for death and it answers. I love that line, we call for death and it answers. 1,000 fires turn the forest into dust and bone, a wind so thick with ash. The statue shattered into stone, the leaders turn to lepers begging to survive, scavenge for substance as the last is swallowed by the flies. I don't know why I struggle with that so much. It touches on like very, very common lyrical tropes at the moment, like the politics, environmental crisis, and just a lot of bands just spluttering shit. The easy ones for me, because I don't agree with what they say, Phil Labonte from All That Remains, Frankie Palmieri, Franzilla, just basically the ones where, is it right wing in America? I know very little about politics, so I don't know if they're the bad guys or good guys, but it does feel like they do spend more time talking about how shit things are and how the left or the opposite side of them have got it so easy, whereas it doesn't really feel like that. You say to them, but what about this? And they just like, no, just bat it away, begone thought, or educational thought. And I like the lyrics. They are like the world of that's not even word metaphorical, which I've said before. I'm not the biggest fan of. They are on it. They are the honest lyrics, but they're not so in your face of A plus B is this. It's just it's a bit more theatrical, which is like the whole point of lit. You can tell I've like tried doing my notes differently to this because I keep getting tongue-tied. And actually just like reading back through those lyrics, they're not metaphorical at all, but they're just, again, that's actually really brutally honest, but in such a very, what's the word I'm trying to think of? You know, like how English teachers are forever going about how the sky is blue, or what's it mean? It just means the sky is blue. What they want that to be, like the sort of language they want writers to use, that's what Fit For An Autopsy are doing. They're taking good, hard points, and they are putting that, like, pizzazz, for lack of a better word, and they're putting this, like, cover over the top of it to make it, A, more threatening, because there's deathcore at the end of the day, and B, just that message hits harder. The fucking line "we call for death and the answers" is actually really fantastic. I keep looking and I'm like, that's really good. As the album as a whole, then, because I feel like this has been a bit of a car crash, the individual parts of this album are fantastic. From, you know, the screams and the growls and the cleans of the vocals, that guitar attack from the three guys, the rhythm section, each individual part has it's just fantastic. They all play a part in this band so well, but for whatever reason, and it's going to be a recurring theme for pretty much every album I've reviewed this week. I think it might have something to do with a clipping album. For whatever reason, the sum of its parts, I just can't vibe with at all. I'm not saying this is a bad album by any stretch of the imagination. You know, get to about Mirrors or in Unloved, and you are in the point where you're like, man, this is just a hard-hitting, heavy album. It's full of riffs, and it sounds tight as shit, and oh god, the production, it's all so fucking good. Even down to production, even down to the artwork, the individual part of this album is fucking great. But get to Mirrors or get to Unloved, and it's just like, okay, let's have something a bit different now. And then for me, by the time at the end, I think Napalm Dreams is a good finisher, but by the time you get to the end, it's like, it's just very samey. And I know it's hard to make, it's hard to make deathcore expansive. We know that from Suicide Silence. They tried that and everyone flipped their fucking shit. And yeah, it's just, and I feel bad because I want to like this album. There's a part of me that really, really wants to like this album, but there's also a part of me that's just like, it's just some music. It's not good. It's not bad. Wouldn't go as far to say it's not good. It's just not bad, and I don't know if that's a better thing or not. I don't know. It's a weird one to put my finger on, but it's what else be to do. This is my first album of Fit For An Autopsy. Deathcore is not something I follow a lot. I think I had a list that was going to send me into like March 2020 of albums I need to listen to, and there's a bunch of deathcore in there. I went through them all to find out what should I keep, what should I like get rid of, and I think I got rid of all but one or two deathcore albums on the second list. It's like, oh, actually, yeah, could probably not, but it is what it is. If you like big riffed deathcore, I even say if you're into like more just straight up death metal sort of things, you can give Fit For An Autopsy a go, because the level of riffs and the groove behind it, I think it has more in common with modern day death metal than it does traditional deathcore, but that's just me as someone who's not familiar with the genres. But it is Fit For An Autopsy. I'll try it again. That is Fit For An Autopsy. Why are words? The album's called The Sea of Tragic Beasts. It's their fifth album from the New Jersey lads. And yeah, big riftings. On to now the other side of the planet. We're going to Melbourne in Australia for progressive metalcore debut from Thornhill. The album's called Dark Pool, and they mix a heavy, bounce-driven assortment of riffs with some atmospheric synths. Almost rhymed. The synths sort of bounce between borderline orchestral sort of stuff in the same way Architects do. Almost down to like the 80s, like slow-paced synthwave, or like, is that chillwave? I might just remember what chillwave is. And it's a follow-up to their insanely popular Butterfly EP, which I got a friend at work who did not stop going on about that fucking EP. So that might have something to do with why I know about Thornhill. It also was an Instagram advert, which, excuse me, was a pretty good one. It was pretty good. I'll go into it a little bit more, hopefully, in a bit. But the one thing that struck me with Thornhill, as opposed to a lot of bands of this ilk, is the vocalist. What is his name? Jacob Charlton. He's not. It's actually no. Some of the things that Fit For An Autopsy. It's not a squeaky, whiny kind of voice that just gets on your nerve. He has got a fantastic, clean singing vocal to him. Long may vocalists like these pop back up and start repopulating the music scene, because we had a huge phase of like post-hardcore, metalcore, and this, that, and the other bands. I keep thinking about, it's not Pierce for a Veil, it's the other one, Sleeping with Sirens. That voice just cringes me out. Anyway, we're not talking about Sleeping with Sirens, we're talking about Thornhill. It starts off really strong. Views from the Sun has this beautiful synth swell to it. When Jacob Charlton's clean verse comes in, I think they're more in common with Chino Moreno from Deftones. The way that the big swell of synths and that big noise behind the vocal sort of like pushed that vocal even more and pushed the music from, the organic music from the rest of the band more. And then on the screams that he does from the choruses is like lots more drama and lots more the layered vocal effect and that kind of thing, and it adds to a bigger sound for the band. On the song The Haze, I think drummer Ben Mader really, really carries the song well. He's got a really interesting double kick rhythm on bass where I'm just infatuated by. So I think he's done a really great job on there. Jacob, as ever, sounds fucking fantastic. One takeaway from the album was the fact that the vocalist is insanely good. That whole Instagram ad in the first place, what brought me to checking out Thornhill more than what my very hysterical friend did back in the day. But and in cruel irony, it's a very similar thing to what I'm going through with Fit For An Autopsy, where the individual parts of this album are fantastic. Down to like the riffs, the guitar playing, the bounce, the groove, the vocals, the production. The more I look at the album artwork, the more I realise that, oh, actually, it's actually fairly interesting. But again, I can't say it's not bad. It's not a bad album. In fact, I go as far as to say I think I prefer this to the Fit For An Autopsy album. But I just don't know. It's good, but it's not. I just don't know. There's a lot of really good things about this album. Like, it's not, apart from like all the individual parts of the album, it's not desperately repetitive, chugging sort of metalcore. You've got a decent vocalist behind it, again, which I keep going on about. The atmospheric elements of the album, I'm always going to be a fan of atmospherics and synths and like a grandiose sound being added to any kind of album. The riffs are fun. They're entertaining. They are... I won't go as far as to say like they've got a new metal bounce to them, but they've got some kind of very erstwhile, catchy, engaging bounce to them, and you've got a lot of clever lyrics in there as well. It's just, for whatever reason, again, progressive metalcore is not something I dive into a lot. This is just, me I'm exploring my options after listening to every other genre for the past 5 or so years. Actually, more than that, I'm going to give myself more credit. I've been listening to this whole music for fucking years. Decade? Maybe. But yeah, the world where this lives in, that progressive metalcore bubble, this is going to absolutely explode. I already know my friend Mitchell is going to fucking love this album if he hasn't listened to it already. It is the debut album from the Melbourne, Australia band Thornhill. It's called The Dark Pool. What the fuck is happening in Australia to release A, bands like this, and B, bands of this caliber just every 10 minutes? Like, what's going on down there? Right. I'm really annoyed the fact that I can't. If it is clipping, then clipping is like the ultimate. What's the opposite of curse? Blessing and a curse for albums this week, or just in general. But I'm really upset that I can't enjoy brand new, well, new to me genres of music. But we'll move on. We're going to look at an EP. It's kind of an EP. It's kind of a mixtape. No one's quite sure what. It's by Poppy, who you might remember from literally earlier this year. It's called 3. I'm hoping it's called 3 and not I, because that would just be annoying. EP is called 3, and it is by Poppy. It's a third EP. They are from London, and of course they are a very occult-driven alternative heavy metal band. They released their debut album Ghost start of the year, which was fantastic. Excuse me, as a quick spoilers into album of the year stuff, The Goat, it's definitely making its claim up there. It's insanely good. It's been bouncing up there since it came out. And yeah, it is. I'm a big fan of that album. I think, not having listened to the Volume 2 EP that came beforehand, and I had a clean slate for the band, I think it's helped me, because a lot of people are like, I just wish they'd expanded on more from the EP. I didn't have to worry about that at all. I just took it for what it was, and it was fucking fantastic. The EP, it was a very short build-up. It had a few teasers here and there, and it got released in conjunction with the announcement of their Halloween show. And for me, it wasn't as immediate as The Goat. I think The Goat, because it opened straight away with Black Hole and Vengeance, you've got some slamming, rolling riffs that really get the album going off well. It's not so far as to say like this thrash metal, but the old school, like almost Iron Maiden sort of pace with like bigger, crunchier riffs to it. Whereas 3 opens with, just in general, it's just got like a much slower pace to the overall album. The opener for 3 is a very slow, very bass heavy song in Powder Blue. And then, like I said, the rest of the album, it's got like a bit more of a relaxed feel to it. Out of the 8 songs, you've got 3 that I consider like the closer to the Goat level of very spooky heavy metal. You've got 3 of the songs which are a little bit slower down, a bit more doomier, and you've got 2 interludes or like sort of like jam songs. And it's mad the fact that I'm considering this a more relaxed, more chilled out kind of album for Poppy, considering 2019 for them has been festivals. They've done, I'm pretty sure they did Reading and Leeds, and they've been at award shows, and they've just recently done a co-headline tour of Europe with Bokassa. That was like all after the main album tour at the start of the year. So it's mad the fact that to me, I would have thought like, energy's still up, we must keep going, and it's like, nah, you know what, we're just gonna go to bed, we're just gonna sleep and just chill out and just turn out some riffs here and there and just see where it goes. But if anything, I'm surprised I released anything at all, because I would just nap for the rest of 2019, but that's because I'm a bitch. Once the songs start to sit and you start to match the level of energy with the EP, you're not like up here, my hands above my head, you're not up here trying to compare it to The Goat, or compare it to the energy of The Goat. Once you sort of like relax, and maybe it's not for me, but some people like to have some floral encouragement, we'll say, it becomes a great 20-minute EP and a great 20-minute ride. There's a your mum joke in there somewhere, but I'm not going to rise to it. The slower stuff starts to feel more in keeping with Demons or Entombed. It's very slow, it's very methodical, it's very Sabbath in the way it blends doom metal with like riff-driven heavy metal. The EP kind of makes it feel like Will Michaels' bass is like the lead singer or like the lead contributor of the band. They have the mix on the bass. It's just a simple thing. It's basically do what And Justice for All did, but the opposite. But with it being like a much more doomy, slower kind of vibe to the album, the bass being the lead and having like this deep, dark tone to it, it just fits it really well. Like it builds up that mood so well, and for the band and the EP. The highlight for me is Serotonin. That song fucking slams. Like where I said before, like the album as a whole was pretty difficult to get into. Serotonin from the off is insanely good. That's the song where, if I had to pick one, that would be the song that would live on the GOAT. It is. I love that song. It's so fantastic. And the rest of the album, like, you got Agatha, Letter Bomb, Charms. They've all got like very catchy and engaging choruses, and it makes it a very, very good EP. Thankfully, clipping didn't ruin this one for me, but have really enjoyed Puppy. If you haven't really listened to Puppy, fucking do it. They released that album, The Go, earlier this year. It's their debut album. It's fantastic. It's an album of the year contender for myself. This EP, not as good, obviously, because they've set themselves up to a high standard, and this is a very different vibe, in my opinion. But the occult rockists, whatever they are, it feels more in keeping with their occult aesthetic that they've got going on. And I don't know where I'd sit, because I've got like a vague list of EPs of the year. I don't know where I'd sit, but highly, I think, definitely going to be spoken about at the end of the year in various top 10 lists and shenanigans like that. But do give it a go. It's a third EP. It's literally just called 3, but in Roman numerals. The band's called Puppy, and they're British, and they're beautifully British, I should say, because they're from London. And yeah, support. But it's not quite local for me, but you know what I mean. Compatriots. The Queen. T. Before we get into the, I guess, like, I'm doing it as this sort of way, but the main event album for this week, I'm going to try and talk about 2 non-rock, non-metal albums, which can only go so well. I think last time I did was for either the Ali Reza album or the Billie Eilish album. I can't remember what one came out first or second, but we'll give it a go. We're going to start with Mike Patton and Jean-Claude Vannier and their avant-garde album, Corpse Flower. I think by now, if you're listening to a very low-key, very, very small, tiny even, alternative music podcast, you will undoubtedly be familiar with Mike Patton. He of Tomahawk, Fantomas, I really hope I pronounced that right, Mr. Bungle, and of course, Faith No More fame, and Left 4 Dead. Jean-Claude Vannier, he is a French composer. He's worked with film, TV, as well as other musicians. He is insanely popular in France. Where has he gone? I don't know if it's a performance piece or a film or whatever, but I see the word Gainsbourg thrown around with Vannier attached to it a lot. Yeah, he's just one of those guys where in his native country he is the bomb by the sounds of it. And Patton has got like a habit of doing these like composer collaborations. He's worked with John Erik Kaada of Norway. I think they've done 2 albums together actually, just called Patton Kaada or Kaada Patton, whatever it is. He worked with the late Luciano Berio of Italy. I don't know if I could sound more British saying Berio. He's also worked with Anthony Pateras. Why did I struggle with that? Pateras of Australia. And he's also done 1 or 2 covers albums of like Italian film and doo-wop songs, I think. So in terms of like working with or working inspired by composers and arrangers, this is not new territory for him. And in terms of what he can do musically, this weird avant-garde thing is nothing new for him either. Musically, the album is a collection of experimental rock. You've got French pop in there, various orchestral genres. I think there's a bit of jazz in there as well. And quite often they are working in harmony together on the same song. The most obvious example that I can think of is Camion. It has this like really jarring guitar hook, which then quickly turns into this like indie style verse, and then that gets cut off with, you know, in like B movies, old school like 90s B movies, where you had that like dun 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 sort of this dramatic thing has happened in a movie, in this movie sort of thing. It's kind of like that kind of like orchestral like surge to it, and there's a big like film noir vibe that comes off the album, like whether it's songs like Chanson d'amour or Insoluble. Really hope I pronounce that right because it's all fucking French. Those songs in particular have this really like sultry feel to them, and like it comes from pianos or accordions, respective of the song. It's either like the music of like that, or it is Mike Patton himself, because he's just a mad soundboard of like different vocal styles. He's got in the album, he's got the spoken word, he's just got traditional singing, he's got a growl, there's various effects and layerings to it, he's got backing vocals, it sounds like at one point he's on the phone, he's got like a reverb to it, he's got like a staticky kind of thing over the top, even stutters to like really enhance the character of the song. I think that was in, it was either Chanson d'amour or Cold Sun One Beer. And the album as a whole, there's a lot, because this is like, if you want to pigeonhole it, this is avant-garde music, and there's, if you're not familiar with avant-garde, it's basically just a fancy word of saying really fucking weird. There's a lot of excessively weird moments on this album. I really like the end song, Pink and Blue, or Pink and Bleu. And yeah, I really enjoy it. It's got beautiful orchestration to it. And Patton's vocal on it are just insanely good. Some of like the softest things I've heard him do. But it opens with a line, "When I drink too much, I shit my pants." It's not subtle, it's very much at the forefront. It's just quite in your face with the vocal. And I don't know because it's just how absurd the lyric is, but you've got that. A Schoolgirl's Day is this really, really unsettling narration of a schoolgirl's day. However, the spoiler is that it's her last day alive. I won't give away how, but like the music, it becomes, I put erratic, but I don't think that's right. It becomes more panicked. I saw echoed because of another note. The way like the strings sort of like clash against each other, and how like the build, all the instruments go from like working in harmony together to now like trying to fight each other, where it like slowly builds to what would be like the song's climax. And it adds more instruments. You've got extra loops in there, you've got extra horns, Patton's voice. The clarity in that changes between like almost like a staticky narration to like a more echoed like narration over like a tannoy system. It's really bizarre. Yeah, I find it difficult listening to that song because the way it's been done is great. It's just the actual song itself is just really, I don't know, I can't put my finger on it again, but it's just very odd and kind of unnerving. I think unnerving is the best way of doing it because it is so detailed in its description, because it's done everything from she gets up, she puts everything exactly how it's supposed to, exactly where everything lives. She brushes her hair with a brush. She eats dinner with her family. She goes to school. She does literacy, history. It's just the level of detail in each part of this girl's day is just, and in song form, it's just no, I'm not sure. Browning was like the lead single, I guess you could call it, from the album. I remember really liking it, still quite like it. It is still impeccably weird. It feels like one big introduction for this character, interspersed with this like really upbeat, catchy chorus. That's got, rhythmic clapping, Mike sounding like a Don as he usually does. And the last song I'll like isolate is On Top of the World, which you could easily tell me that this is a new Faith No More song, and I'd believe you. And it's a weird fit in terms of like how weird this album is. Having a song that's very Faith No More-y in amongst it all, I think that might be the weirdest bit, because it's just, if in the grand scheme of things, obviously Faith No More never been one for traditional normal, but in the grand scheme of things, this feels more normal and therefore makes it weirder. It's a weird fit to put in there. The album as a whole, again, another one that I would say is bad. But it's, as much as I'm saying it's not bad, it's not the same way where the Fit For An Autopsy or the Thornhill albums, where it's not bad but I don't know why, it's not good but I don't know why. I know where I sit with this. It's just okay, because of how like weird and different it is. It is going to be, it's a hard listen. It's definitely more experimental, definitely one where you sort of listen to it and you like ponder and stroke your beard and watch the rain and everything goes black and white. Yeah, I haven't had much experience with like avant-garde music outside like avant-garde metal, which has always got that metal side of things to bolster it or make it more appealing to myself. But a straightforward like jazz and French pop and orchestral backed avant-garde, insanely different to what I'm usually used to. And yeah, Patton does a great job being Mike Patton. He can do pretty much anything you'd ever ask him to do with a vocal. It's not going to make me want to go and look at more stuff from Vannier. I won't lie to you. And similarly, I've got limited interest in looking at the other composer collaboration stuff that Patton has done. If you like your music weird, and if you like it where it's not all the way like Car Bomb, where it's like excessively excessively proggy mathcore, in fact, give it a shout. It's if you want, like I said, if you want something different, pretty fucking different, it is called Corpse Flower. I don't know if I said that at the start of the review, actually. It's a collaborative album between Faith No More's Mike Patton and French composer Jean-Claude Vannier. Vannier spelled Vannier. I never spelled that well. How good for me. That's not. I don't even have dyslexia, and I'm pretty shit at spelling. Right. I'm not sure if this would have been picked up in recording, like if there's like a blip in the sound, but in the time it's taken me to, or in the time between the review for Corpse Flower and what's coming up next, I've gone off and just done a full day's work. So that's just a little insight into my life. What was once about 5 o'clock in the afternoon is now 2 o'clock in the morning, but hey ho. We'll move on though. We'll look at Clipping and their brand new album, There Existed an Addiction to Blood. It's album number 3 for the LA-based trio. In terms of musical genre, they are, if you were to pigeonhole them, I've seen a lot of people compare them or brand them as horrorcore, which, as I'm very quickly finding out, is beyond what Insane Clown Posse did. Whereas they were more like a bit of a caricature surrounding the genre, horrorcore is very much quite an aggro and aggressive form of hip hop. If you want to go a little bit broader, Clipping have got bits of industrial, obviously hip hop is there, experimental, your noise. They are a much bigger beast than just the name or the brand of horrorcore, or even just basic hip hop. It comprises of, and this is the thing that's getting me quite interested, it comprises of producers Jonathan Snipes, formerly of the musical group Captain Ahab, and William Hudson, who can't find any other project he's been a part of. They are joined by rapper and lyricist David Diggs, whom, like, as with many musicians at the moment, has a spot of acting as well. He is got a role on the American sitcom Blackish, and he most known for, I should say, playing the lead in Hamilton the Musical, from which he has earned a Grammy and a Tony Award. Which, little things like that, I think the only other example I could think of is Will Smith's wife, uh, Jada Pinkett Smith. She's got her own metal band. I can't remember the name of the band. I'm probably, well, no, I won't Google it, but she's got her own metal band. I just love finding out that, I say normal people, they are all actors, so they are very, like, extraordinary people, but on the surface, quite, apart from obviously their job, very, like, normal, very relative people. And actually, no, because they are at the forefront of media so often, they've got this visor and they're very smiling and happy at all times because the camera's always going to be there. And then there's this, like, deep, dark underlaying of, like, savagery or just depravity, for which this album definitely has a lot of all of those things. But no, that's got nothing to do with the album. I just thought it was like a really cool little tidbit of information to know about the band and their vocalist. So my relationship with hip hop, for many years I subscribed to the idea, the stereotype that if you are a metalhead or if you're a punk or anything like that, you tend to stay away from hip hop. Hip hop is there's basically no overlap. You are one side or you're another. You don't really go anywhere near that kind of thing. The only hip hop artists I could say I listened to, there were songs here and there. I liked Lockinville for a while. They had a few songs on a FIFA game. I can't really think of any of the, like, just single on their own hip hop songs that I really got into. But if I was going to pick a single musician, obviously it would be Eminem. But even then, as much as I've got a whole album of Eminem's and he's got an extensive greatest hits collection which I could happily listen to, it's very rare. Even now that I've got a bit more on board with it, it's very rare that I sit down and say, you know what, right now, I want to listen to some Eminem. You know, it just doesn't really happen for me like that. When everyone was kicking off about Kendrick Lamar, that 2-album sprint of To Pimp a Butterfly and Damn, I thought, I'll finally start divulging in. Listen to Damn, and that was incredible. Listen to Pimp a Butterfly, and I was thinking about this earlier today, well, as I was walking home. I think I might prefer To Pimp a Butterfly than Damn, which, from what I've seen, a little bit, like, against the grain in terms of a general opinion. But from there, I decided that I did want to try and listen to more of this kind of music, or at least get more on board with rap, hip hop, and that's where it all came from. Where, you know, pretty much each week when I've got 3 or 4, or sometimes even 5 at the moment, alternative music albums, there's usually like one non-alternative, so one very more streamlined, mainline kind of music album that I'll listen to at the same time, which obviously won't comment on because wrong sort of podcast for that. But I remember last year I enjoyed the Tech Nine album. He's got one out this year, but I didn't like it enough to warrant him out. It's very daft. He's a very big character, which there is a lot of them. We think like rock fans have got it weird with like Axl Rose and Ronnie Radke and that kind of thing. Some of the characters you got in hip hop are just unreal. This year, I've spoken about the Ali Reza album. Aside from 1 or 2 songs, I'm actually kind of disappointed by it, even though it is an earache album. It just didn't sit fully right. Listen to the new Watsky album that came out this year, the Post Malone album, Wicked Face Springs Eternal, which I think out of all of them, Wicked Face Springs Eternal will be one that kind of suits fans of, or anyone listening to the podcast, because it's a lot darker, it's a lot more sinister, it's a lot more broody. By his own admission, he does blend. His album's called Suffer On, by the way. He does blend hip hop with emo, so definitely want to keep an eye on it. And I also really, really enjoyed the Denzel Curry album, but at the same time, some of the worst albums I've heard all year have been hip hop albums. the Logic album, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, I cannot begin to go on. It's even got Eminem on it, but I cannot begin to go on about how fucking shit that album is. And a lot of like big names as well. Even the big names, I still can't get my head around. Brockhampton, I liked the album last year. This Ginger this year was fucking atrocious. Kill Bill and Rav was quite boring. Scarface and Ghostface Killer. There's a between those two albums, 'cause I was listening to the same sort of time. There's a just about a greatest hits EP between them, but other than that, all a bit toilet. So I am trying to get out of that stereotype that I've built up myself, and at least nothing else. When I got friends trying to listen to music, or there's a party or something, I don't have to sit down and think, oh fucking hell, I'm gonna have to listen to some damn dirty hip hop. I can be used to the kind of music that it is and just sort of like try to enjoy it, and hopefully something will pop up that I recognize. And so when Stephen Hill of Right Out Podcast I mentioned a few times on here, I'll happily admit I take a lot of inspiration from what Steve and Renfrey are doing over there. When he started going on about this new hip hop collective, this new hip hop album that wasn't your stereotypical hip hop, it belongs in a very alternative world, but still has no trace of metal or rock in there. And just how much he banged on about it, it sounded like something I just had to have a look at. And oh my lord, I've said about it at the start of the show with the Fit For An Autopsy album, the Thornhill album, that listening to this album has sort of like swayed my view on the rest of what I listened to this week, because usually I try to like run through the 4 or so albums I've got to listen to just like sequentially, so after another, or sometimes I'll just binge one all day and then I won't go near it again for a while to like catch up on the rest. All this week, all I've been doing is going back to the Clipping album. I just keep, and it's not like I'll listen to 1 or 2 songs from it. I will put it on from the start and I'll listen all the way up, not quite to the end of Piano Burning, because that literally, the end song of this album is literally 18? Is it? I always thought it was 14. No, literally 18 on the dot minutes of a piano burning, and somehow, I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page, it has a writer. Her work often involves recording natural found sounds. She's also recording Fluxus-inspired pieces involving burning or drowning pianos. How do you drown a piano? That's a question for another day. Annie or Ania Lockwood. Fucking from New Zealand, of course she's a bit. Yeah, that's some other time's problem. So yeah, I think that kind of leaves us with this as a stupendously dark album, and I've written that it satisfies that dark, twisted desire, or that dark, twisted enjoyment that alternative music fans get from heavy music. Anything that scopes the range of heavy music. It was black metal, death metal, doom, sludge, even like straightforward like riff heavy metal. And like you take a band like Puppy, who have got that, they have, in the grand scheme of things, compared to like extreme metal, they've got quite a clean metal kind of sound, but they are bringing in the slight stony edge, and their whole theme and image is very based in the occult. It all is satisfied similarly, in a similar sort of way as this Clipping album. It is draped in horror and abrasion and flat out aggression from start to finish. There's a lot of use of heavy static, to the point where you can consider some songs noise rap. The song Nothing is Safe feels like it's sampling the theme from Halloween, John Carpenter theme, which a couple of people have picked up on since I've read. You've got interludes here and there. I believe it's Haunting and Possession, where haunting is a woman going on about how she keeps having like weird activities happen in her apartment. You know, like a cat appearing when neither her or the previous tenant or any of her neighbors own a cat. Her bed sheets will get tugged. She'll hear knocking or running around. And then in possession, it sounds like she's having a conversation with a mad doctor, who like starts saying like it's all paranoia. Look at my watch, and starts doing like, you know, it's very typical like look at my watch, not around a watch, and you're gonna get hypnotized by it. Starts off with that, and she's like, you're just imagine you're falling asleep, your eyes are very heavy, and then it slowly becomes a thing of where, you know, he's got sinister intentions, that it becomes very dark and spoopy. And then the song Story 7, it's part of like a higher narrative that I've seen that they've written about in previous releases up into There Is an Addiction to Blood. That song is fucking incredible. It's hard to talk about without spoiling it, because the narrative of the song is interesting. It took me a couple of listens to go around like the full extensiveness of the lyrics. In fact, once you listen to the song a few times, you get the basic idea of what they're doing, and then when you read the lyrics, and you find the story, like how much detail the story is being given. And then I read it on Genius, which obviously, if you're not familiar, it gives you context to lyrics, and it starts saying how this bit's referencing this version of the story and this part's referencing this version. So now I want to go back through the clipping back catalogue and try and piece together the song myself, but I still don't think there's all those parts out. I think you got story 1, 5, 7, and 2, but I might be mistaken. It's just pulling numbers up my ass. And to give it like a very brief overline, you've got a PI who like does his job to satisfy like what's going on in his life. A female character involved in what he's doing then goes off to try and like continue satiating her needs. She's not all she's cracked up to be, and it's just full of like twists and turns. It's all horror film. It's all very much the golden age of horror sort of thing. And the way like the verses of him rapping like a narration, and then the chorus kicks in, and it's like overlap vocal, but it definitely has the feel of a chorus. He's still the narration of what's going on, but just the execution he does it in is very songwritery, which is a daft thing to say, I know, but once you listen to the song, I hope you will, at least, otherwise I just sound like a fucking idiot. You kind of get what I'm trying to say. It's a narrative, but it's built like a story, or built like a song story. Yeah, it's a hard one to put up, but just know the song is fucking insane. And it's a lot of sharp tempo changes as well. Sing It Out All in Your Head, which has got some guest vocals from Counterfeit Madison and Robin Hood. Not that Robin Hood. And just the way like a lyric will happen, and it's got like your standard beat, and then it's just got very abrasive cut for like the actual beat in the background, the music in the background. So the rapping parts are done by Robin Hood. She will like just spit the rhymes out, and she's actually really, really great in the song. And then it'll get to the chorus, and it's just like a lot of, you know, like when you plug a guitar amp in, you get that like sort of noise. It's swells, it's noise, and you just got David, very monotone and very like blunt with his words and using very few words at that. And it's a lot of that, and then at the end you've got Counterfeit Madison almost doing like a prayer in the end, and you think you've got the like jittery, stop-starty, static noise of the bulk song, and this very like isolated, very coldly executed prayer at the end. And all that is combined with, and it's a recurring thing throughout a lot of the album, very lo-fi vocals. It's like similar to what I was saying about the Mike Patton album. David uses a lot of different effects on his vocals, not just rapping and singing and, you know, almost borderline spoken word sort of stuff. It's a lot of static. It's a lot of, it sounds like he's singing down a telephone or through a radio or something like that. I've compared it to, imagine if Code Orange made a full hip hop album, like no guitars, no like bass or drums in that traditional sense, all a hip hop album, and the experimental clashing stop start sounding music that they would do in their hardcore music transferred into hip hop, and I think that's pretty far and away what you would get for clipping. Lyrically, it's a lot rooted in violence and the racism throughout history, and a lot of horror in there. Blood of the Fangs got the lyric, Brother Malcolm done told you by any means, so what y'all talk about, all on the same team. And it's got a lot of cutting lines in Bloodfang along that line, which are so fantastic, bringing up how, like, the history of police and violence against African Americans, like general violence against African Americans, racism we had over the past 100 years and beyond. Use 100 years purely because it's like Emancipation Proclamation or like McGovern's Civil Rights Movement from the 50s, 60s. Which someone, no, it wasn't someone, it was a post I read the other day. Martin Luther King and Frank were born the same year, and they would have only been 90 this year, and that tripped me up something fierce because everything they stood for wasn't that long ago. And that's a fucking weird one. In Run For Your Life, I got the line, boosting up the murder rate, Hannibal Lecter your face, chainsawed your rib cage under the missing person case. That's like obviously the more horror side of things, and it's unrelenting. It just doesn't give a shit. It's fucking wonderful for that. I've written that Story 7 again, every line in that song, because it does read like a full horror narrative story that you're going through. I cannot. The reason why I put this and the Mike Patton Jean-Claude Vannier album in is because although they aren't metal or rock or anything to do with either of those genres, I advertise this as an alternative music podcast. Absolutely, these are alternative to the mainstream norms. And it's frustrating because I want to talk about more the clipping album, but well, in fact, no, especially the clipping album. I want to talk about it more. But because my palette is for, you know, guitar-based music and heavy music and that sort of thing, I just don't know what else to say other than it is horrifically dark, this album. It's not your traditional kind of heavy, but it is still an absolute riot of an album. And like I said, it's one of the few albums where I don't go in and just look for a particular song. No, the songs are there. Going back to Story 7 again, it has got like a really catchy chorus to it. Nothing Is Safe has got a big powering chorus to it as well. La Mala Ordina with El Camino and Benny the Butcher, I think is probably the closest you'll get to like a standard dark hip hop kind of sound. Club Down in the verses are so attacking, so like almost painful on the ears, and then the chorus kicks in. It is like the songs are there, but just as much if you start intro and go all the way there, and you can even, like I said, you can cut off Piano Burning. So if you go from intro all the way down to attunement with Pedestrian Deposit, you'll just get lost in this world. It's fucking unreal. And yeah, one of the reasons I bring it up as well is because I genuinely think if you go for like the heavy, aggressive, like metal kind of music, 100% give this a go. because I do think this is the sort of like crossover album, and I think going on, I do absolutely plan to go through Clipping's back catalogue. Clipping can be one of the next bands to break through the hip hop mold into the world of rock and metal in the same way that Prodigy did, and kind of in the same way that Pendulum and lesser point, but Chase and Status did as well. 100%. It's just a fucking, I love it. Definitely the best non-rock metal album I've listened to all year, and I'm more interested to find out where it's going to fit in my end of year top 20s and even top 10, dare I say. Yeah, it's fucking incredible. Give it a shout. It is There Existed an Addiction to Blood. The band is called Clipping, with a full stop at the end. And yes, very, very good. Very, very aggressive, experimental, horrorcore hip hop. Whatever that means. We're going to get to the last album of the week, night for me, because it's nearly 2:30 in the morning and I should probably go to bed. But we're not going to stop until we talk about Jimmy Eat World and their brand new 10th album, Surviving. The Mesa, Arizona lads, or I think at this point they can be classed as legends, 10 albums in, 25 years in. And it's the first full-length Jimmy Eat World I've ever really gone into. I've never not liked Jimmy Eat World. They like, every song of theirs I've heard is instant gold. They are like outrageously good songwriters. I just don't know why I've never actually gone in proper on an album. But I'm probably having said that, I'm probably the bad example of this. But what is it? Just me, or does it feel like Jimmy Eat World are constantly on like the back foot of being second guessed? Like, I never really thought about it. I read another review for Surviving, and they said everyone's favorite underdog, Jimmy Eat World. I was like, how can you be an underdog 25 years into a career, 10 albums in? You know, like, I know this is coming from a wrestling fan who, you've always got the underdog stories of like Rey Mysterio or Daniel Bryan, but at this point, given how they can compete and how they wrestle, they're not really the underdogs anymore. They are the top of the pecking order in terms of talent. How are Jimmy Eat World then still seen as like the lesser guys? Like, you've got a history of like bands who nearly made it and then broke up. So you got Earth Tone 9, you've got Botch, you've got Oceanside, and most recently you had Feed the Rhino. But Jimmy Eat World, I've never really heard anyone say, oh, this is a really bad album from them. Oh, they did too much experimentation here. It just wasn't very good. They've been extraordinarily consistent and revered for the past 25 years. And yet, the album Surviving, I think I'd like heard about it the day the album came out, maybe the day or so before. There was like no fanfare online. I saw very little in terms of build. There's been no excitement really. I've never really seen many people talk about it since it has come out. But for Jimmy Eat World fans, I feel like it does tick every box that you're after. And even just like fans of like power pop and emo and that sort of thing, who like me have listened to the greatest hits of Jimmy Eat World and never really gone in as a full thing. I don't see what's missing. I don't see what Jimmy Eat World need to do to become, like, I would say the wave of emo that they help inspire. So like your Menzingers, maybe I don't even go as far to say even your Wonder Years. I think they surpassed Jimmy Eat World in terms of billing for a festival. I think easily they could trade like who's supporting who for like a headline tour, or even do co-headline. But certainly Menzingers, maybe not Wonder Years at the festival, but certainly Menzingers, the sort of trajectory they've been on recently, or the past since their own inception. It's a weird one. We'll touch on it a little bit later, but for now, let's like stick to surviving. From what I've seen, Jimmy Eat World have kind of like a two-pronged attack in their music now, or like two different iterations of themselves. You've got the classic, more rockier kind of stuff from, like some Bleed America and Damage and their early albums. Oh, excuse me, it's a first yawn. That's not a good sign. And in Futures and their previous album, Integrity Blues, you've got a dreamier, moodier kind of sound to them. And it's never strayed away too far, from that core Jimmy Eat World sound. Like, you put a song on, it doesn't matter if it's from the very dreamy side of Futures or the very like rock heavy, like Salt Sweet America. No. Sugar, Salt, Sweet, wherever it's called. The Bleed American song. Those two spectrums, it's always going to be Jimmy Eat World. Both the songwriting, the sound, and Jimmy Atkins' voice, all very, very key characteristics of the band. So you're always going to like realize it's them. And in Surviving, I think there is a good mix of those two sides of Jimmy World. I wouldn't go as far as to say this is a perfect blend of the two styles to make it one sonic sound that Jimmy World can go through in the future. I do think there are songs that individually, these are your rock ones. There's a couple of the dreamy side. It is more of a rock feeling kind of album. The album opens with like a Weezer rivaling heavy guitar power pop title track, which is, it's very much established that this is a rock album again. And it's got like the very classic bombastically loud chorus, which I want to call them like peak Jim Adkins clean shouts. How do you describe it? Because if I say yell or shout or yelp or anything like that, if I was reading it, my immediate thought would be to like hardcore or anything like that. When it's just like the big vocal, is it just actually just a big vocal? You know what it is, because as soon as you hear it, because it's Jim fucking Adkins. But yeah, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the right word is, and I still don't know what it is. But you just know, right? You just know. From the soundtrack, you get into Criminal Energy, which is a wonderful, fucking brilliantly catchy, straightforward pop rock song. Showcases the guitar playing of Adkins and Tom Linton. When you get to track 3, Delivery, that's where the more dreamier stuff comes in. And Delivery itself has got this like shimmering synths and a very indie pop drum beat from Zach Lind that is played alongside this perfect harmony of acoustic and echoed or reverb, whatever the proper term is, electric guitars. And Rick Birch's bass playing on the song sort of underlines like a bass beat. That's not a bass beat, like a dance song. That's like pulsating kind of rhythmic beat in the back. It's very much placed like that, so it has got this huge pop influence in the song. But if you want a pop influence in the Jimmy Eat World song, go to track 4. The song is called 555. Holy fucking titties. That song is fucking unreal. Like, holy good goddamn. I heard noises as I said that. I really hope it was my chair and not someone about to eat me. But hopefully it's just someone outside falling over. But yes, 555 is in... Oh my god. I wrote down that it's like a beautiful early 90s gothic pop sort of feel to it. 100% I can feel a lot of Shakespeare's Sisters in this song, which I only found out today that Shakespeare's Sisters is made up of one of the girls from Bananarama. I had no idea. For some reason that really, really struck me as a key bit of information that I wanted to share, so there you go. Yeah, like to talk about everything I just said about Delivery, like shimmering synths and this like beautiful like bass line, everything you could want from a modern day indie pop song is in 555. Jim Adkins just sounds like it sounds dumb as shit, but he sounds like an absolute angel in the song. It's so fantastically brilliant. It's worth it just for that song, to be honest. And elsewhere on the album, you've got like sort of Recommit, which is another folk tinged, excuse me, melancholy track. Gives me a lot of like a reiteration of "I'll Steal You Back" from Damage, we'll say. I see a lot of vibes from that. The closing track, Congratulations, it has like a weird passive aggressiveness to it, which I'm fully digging. The vocal harmonizing on the song is one of the better attempts of bleeding the dreamier sort of stuff in with the more rockier kind of stuff in there. I said rock like an asshole, I'm fully aware. And the peak, well, apart from 555, the peak comes from All the Way Stay. Because it features saxophone. The greatest thing to happen to music in 2019, the saxophone. And also as well, whilst we're talking about the song, some beautiful backing vocals from Courtney Marie Andrews. And it really ties off the song really, really well. Starts with literally just like backing up Jim Adkins through his vocal parts, and then she's got her own part where it's just her. And Jesus Christ, she's got a beautiful voice, and it fits this whole power pop emo thing that Jimmy Eat World's got going on. I see no reason why people aren't more on board with Jimmy Eat World, especially now when emo is making such a big fucking comeback past few years. You got like what are now like the old school, even though they haven't been around half as long as Jimmy Eat World. You've got the old school heroes of the Wonder Years, the Menzingers. I can't think of a third because it's 2:30 in the morning. And then you got like a lot of the newer wave sort of stuff. So you've got Spanish love songs. What was the one that I reviewed this year that I really got on board with? You got Minor Love, you got Virginity, you've got I think Nervous has got a bit of emo in there. Fresh, oh god, Fresh. You've got so many of these bands coming through, and emo, like I said, especially Midwest emo, it's making such a big comeback. So why aren't Jimmy Eat World at the front of it saying we were here first, and everyone giving them the praise that I feel they should be deserving of? I don't know. Maybe I could be completely wrong, and then there's someone listening to this from the States saying, actually, Jimmy Eat World just booked in to do a headline show in each state. They are the hottest thing since Fresh Chips. And I will put my hands up and say, you know what, fair dinkum, you did the thing. I can't argue that, but I'd love to see. I'd love to understand why if there's something holding them back, or they just never really pursued it the same way. I can't believe I forgot to mention Tiny Moving Parts. But yeah, baffles me. If someone can give me an idea, all up for it. And I feel like it's like a really underwhelmingly short review for Jimmy World. Again, I finished writing this at about 4 o'clock this afternoon. Then I went for a house viewing. Then I went to work. Well, did a recording. Then went to work and finished off this recording. So I'm going to go to bed now. Who fucking knows when the time frame between me now and the release will be. I'm rambling. I'm just going to go before I hurt myself. Next week, or whenever I next see you, because we know what time is at the moment, I'm going to be looking at Alcest, obviously the big post-black metal boys. Some really fun traditional punk rock in grade 2. Some also traditional, but for different reasons, black metal from Mayhem, post-hardcore from Refused, and some melodic hardcore to sign us all off from Can't Swim. And I've also added another hardcore EP from a band called Creature, which so far has actually been really, really great. So look forward to all that and more next time I see you. And go to bed. That's all I've got. Bye.